Hello, friend and colleague. It's Nikki from Full Voice Music. On our show this week, episode 193, my special guest is Amelia Carr. She is an expert, a voice teacher who specializes in preparing young singers for professional endeavors, musical theater, television, film. She is sharing some important information. We're going to be talking about preparing students for auditions, collaborating with other professionals in the industry, and specifically in this episode, we are talking about performance anxiety. Amelia has just finished a large research project on performance anxiety, and she is sharing the big takeaways with us on the show. Incredible teacher takeaways right here on the Full Voice Podcast. Hello, welcome, and thank you. Thank you for pressing play. I am so glad you are here, and my friend, you will be so glad you are here. This is an incredible conversation, and it's hard to believe that after 192 episodes, we finally have a show about performance anxiety, and this is so many great teacher takeaways. My guest, Amelia, is inspirational. You will love her and her research about performance anxiety is incredibly enlightening. So I'm so excited. Now, before I bring Amelia onto the show, I do want to tell people, because this is also fabulous. We have, if you are listening to this show, April 2024, we have 2 incredible workshops coming up. One is our play-based learning, engagement, and lesson pacing workshop. It's 90 minutes. It will transform the way you approach your lessons. And here is a spoiler alert. Engagement is not compliance. Engagement is not them. It's us. It's the teacher's responsibility. And if you are wanting to learn more about how to connect with your students and how to make your vocal pedagogy accessible for all ages, please check out this workshop. It's fun, it's informative, and there's an extended Q&A. I would love to see you, and I know it's going to level up your teaching. Now, I'm also so excited. Back in November 2023, Dr. Ginevra Williams did a workshop for us called Voice Growth and Change in Kids and Teens. It was wildly successful. It sold out. I usually don't have to put a limit on the workshops, but I had to put a limit on this workshop. It sold out. Ginevra's research spans decades, and she takes teachers through the development of the larynx through infancy into early adulthood, and she does talk about testosterone-led voice change and estrogen-led voice change. She talks about what singers can and cannot do at the different stages and how to nurture all of your students as they go through the voice growth and change process. It is a fabulous workshop. So many opportunities. And both of our workshops offer a teacher quiz and a certificate of participation. So if you would like to, if you are an administrator for a music school and you're sending your teachers to these trainings, yes, there are certificates of participation. Now, my friends, all of this information is under the teacher training tab on our website, Full Voice Music. I would love to welcome you into our Zoom room, whether for the play-based learning, engagement, and lesson pacing workshop, or with Dr. Ginevra Williams talking about voice growth and change in kids and teens. Coming up in April, play-based is on April 7th, and Ginevra's workshop is on April 18th. Be sure to check those out. Now, without further delay, my friend and colleague, Amelia Carr. Welcome to the Full Voice Podcast. I'm so excited. Amelia Carr, how are you?
I'm so good to be here with you. Thank you so much for welcoming me.
This is so overdue. We're at 193 episodes and we have never really talked about performance anxiety. And I think I have found the finest expert I could possibly ever find to discuss this topic. So thank you so much. I also wanted to just mention to my listeners that you are a vocal coach, a voice teacher, a specialist, and you work primarily with young voices in the professional musical theater industry in London.
That's it.
And well, first of all, I want to know how did you find your passion for the young singer? How did that happen?
Well, I recently actually put the answer together, to be honest, because I'm going through diagnosis for ADHD. And spectrum autism. And growing up, I was always really good with younger kids. And I think that was probably covered up by the fact that I was the eldest sibling of four. So I was always busy putting them shows together, and we were all in the performing arts. And my mum always said, "You're either going to be a TV kids host or you're going to be a teacher." And me being the rebellious teenager, I was off to performing arts training, and probably feeling slightly rebellious and anti what my mum thought I would do. But when I was through my training, my little part-time job to fund living in central London was teaching. And then I went out on tour on my first contract, and the company manager asked me to go visit some high schools, do some workshops, for ticket promotions and things like that. And so then as part of that tour, I thought, well, hold on a minute. And I set up a little musical theatre class on Sundays. So where I was on tour around the UK, I would then nip back to my hometown and run a couple of classes and then jump back on tour. And it kind of evolved from there. I then had a performing arts studio, which I ran for 13 years. I sold that about 5 years ago. And I've always taught children from the start. I'm only fortunate enough to have adult clients now because children grow up, and
So they just
I
stay with
kind
you
of follow.
forever.
Majoritively, yeah. I mean, you have a few that have dropped out of the industry or don't sing anymore or don't perform anymore. But yeah, a lot of them I've managed to hold on to, and that's great.
Oh, that's so interesting that right away, the first thing you were performing and working with young singers.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I have to tell you, and I'm going to put a link in the show notes. People have to go to your website. It's so well done. But you call yourself the Mary Poppins of voice coaching, and I love that because I think the image of floating down with an umbrella and
Yeah,
just teaching everybody and solving everybody's problems is just
that's it.
delightful.
That's it. But also, I love it. I
Mm,
absolutely love it. I mean, how blessed am I to see nurturing
mm,
happen and to work with some of the most enthusiastic human beings on the planet, performers, young ones.
mhm.
And they just
Oh.
sponges. So everything you teach, they want to do 100 times more, and it's just so wonderful. But I do also think that there's something in my spectrum as well that probably means that I'm quite good at communicating with children. In my
Oh.
head, I'm a child, I suppose.
I love this. Well, before we had kind of met formally, I became very aware of you and your work because in our Facebook forum, Voice Teachers for Young Singers, you were a very articulate. How am I going to say this? You were very articulate in advocating for young voices. So we're going to get started. I'm going to get a little bit spicy. There has always been kind of that bias towards young singers singing like big songs, big sings, or going into more contemporary or those types of professional situations. And you have always been advocating for, of course, they can do this. Of course, they can sing this. There's a lot of opportunities for children at a professional level. So, how do you still have to advocate in where you are, like what you do, or are you kind of immersed in that professional environment and it's just a thing that people do and we don't question why they're doing it?
That's a really good question, because I think that I really struggled as a young teacher. Bear in mind, I started teaching what I teach now really young, my early 20s. And I think it was Ginevra Williams who said to me, you get a lot of head patting when you're young. And it was almost
Sure.
like, there, calm down, young teacher. We know better. And I used to go to all these events, singing teacher events in the UK, and I just felt like no one took me seriously.
Mm.
And I felt there was a hierarchy of, the classical singing background. And I used to feel that was really rubbish, for want of a better word. And I used to think, well, it doesn't, all of my training was then based initially from a classical perspective. But then when I went off to musical theatre training, it was kind of like, we need to start you again, slate clean. And yes, I had great technique. I had great muscle form, really good alignment and breathing techniques. And I was really aware of my instrument. So that was great. That really helped me. But I saw a lot of other people struggle with that, and still do in my teaching practice. And so I think I started to realize quite early on, and I was always called a rebel, and I always felt like a rebel, because I used to say, well, hold on, musical theatre and commercial singing, pop or whatever, other category, they all have their own techniques. And that is not classical technique. That is a different technique. The same way that a ballet dancer, and tap dancer have different techniques. They're both dancers, but they have different techniques. It doesn't mean they can't cross over. And we all know the power of cross training. And I love to use cross training when I have the liberty of time with a client. We all know that's really beneficial. Or hopefully we all do. But yeah, I really used to struggle. And I would say that probably then it was like a magic button went off when I turned 30, and it started to become a lot easier for me. And engaging with a PG cert, engaging with a master's program obviously helped me find my crowd of people that then I was able to hone in and, like you say, kind of isolate myself from the noise around, and be with like-minded people that respected my specialism and respected what I was saying and what I felt to be true. But yeah, I am very immersed in my industry, so I am probably a bit blindsided to the world outside of that, and any critique of that. But it's certainly something I think is still there. It's just I don't really have time to engage with the negative stuff.
And that's probably just a great thing, right? Like, spend the time on focusing on the things that you love rather than, trying to convince others that, you're doing just fine. I really appreciated the voice that you put out there, advocating, saying yes, because the truth is, there, like I said, there's so many opportunities for young voices. What productions are some of your students in these days? Like, what have you been working on?
Well, I'm so excited to tell you, because on Saturday, 9th of March, I turned 40. Now, I'm totally falling to pieces about this, so let's not talk about that.
Okay.
I'm totally having I know it's not a big deal, but I feel like it's a big deal, probably because of the diagnoses journey that I'm on at the moment as well. But then yesterday, 12th of March, I had my 40th student go on stage as Matilda in the West End.
Oh my
40th.
goodness.
For my 40th year.
Dude.
In the same week. So, okay, it was annoying that she didn't go on Saturday on my birthday, but oh my gosh, yesterday, 40th student, playing Matilda in the West End. So I was absolutely ecstatic, and an absolute wonderful human being, gorgeous family that I just have so much joy from teaching. The older sister has recently been in the tour of School of Rock and is now into her teenage development stage. So having to find, a different landscape to work in as an older child. There's not a lot of work in the musical theatre industry for that sort of 12 to adult. It is really hard for them. But yeah, it's just amazing. So I think I'm so glad you asked me that question.
Well, I remember, full disclosure, I remember when the music to Matilda came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not easy repertoire. I remember listening to that score. I remember I finished a day of teaching, and I always did this thing at the end of the day. I would straighten up my studio, and I would, put YouTube on or whatever to just try and get new music, hear what's out there, try to keep up to date with my repertoire. And the music to Matilda came on, and I remember sitting down in a chair going, wow, that's a mouthful. And I couldn't at the time picture any of my little ones in my studio managing that. And I was like, they're going to want to sing this. I don't know how I'm going to do this. Oh my goodness. And I remember having like a moment of oh no. And School of Rock too, right? That's a big one. That's a big sing as well.
Well, it's like, yeah, School of Rock and Annie as well. We've just had a UK tour of Annie, and I think you had that over on Broadway after COVID, right?
I think so, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I mean, it's all up there. It's like, and School of Rock, I mean, I don't want to say anything too much, but I know that in a crowd of singing teachers, I can say they don't have vocal coaches on board on the teams. So, yeah, it's big things. And, a lot of the School of Rock kids, I don't think I'm out of line by, disclosing that a lot of them lost their voices or had vocal issues once the show went out on the road. They've just done a massive intensive 3 weeks or whatever of rehearsals, singing rock score, high vocal, loads of vocal loading, and they don't have the skills to cool down. The warm up is probably done by a really talented musical director, but it's not probably niched enough for their voices. That's not a criticism, it's just an observation. They're not given vocal care and vocal health. And I don't puff up my chest in any way to say that the couple of students I had on that tour didn't lose their voices, but they were definitely grateful that through the process they had the opportunity to work with me and work out a routine. So steaming, vocal care, the way to sleep, the way to feed their voices, look after their voices better. And it wasn't to say that I didn't get a couple of panicked phone calls to say, I'm vocally tired. What can I do? What should I not do right now? But yeah, we've got a long way to go in the industry to still improve vocal health.
I really appreciate you bringing that to the surface, because I think that's one of the things as voice teachers, whether you're working with professionals or even if you've got students in the school musical, like they often want to take time away from lessons, right? Because they're busy in rehearsals or shows, but it's like they could probably use some check-in lessons where vocal health and care is discussed, and we need to help advocate for our students and let them know. And I love that your students knew to call you, like they knew that they needed to call you and
There is
talk to you.
There's also a lot of fear though, because most of them are contracted to not engage with lessons.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. That's a whole other podcast
There was
right
also
there.
a casting director in London. I won't mention them because they've sadly passed away. And again, absolutely no disrespect to that person. And I had a really wonderful conversation with them about the book they wrote for children in theatre. As a children's casting director, they had written that lessons interfere with the directional process.
Oh dear.
Don't quote me word for word, but then when they issued their second edition of the book, I just couldn't help but get online and talk to them. And thankfully, it was COVID. So we all had a bit more time, and they took the meeting with me, and it was a really lovely discussion. And I just tried to really gently challenge them to that attitude because, you know, I said, look, you have cast so many of my students in shows, and I don't believe they would have got that role without my coaching. I'm not a director. I'm a voice technician. I'm a voice coach. I'm also an industry professional. I've worked in the industry. I know what is required. I understand that you might have experienced many children coming through the door and giving an over directed performance that isn't helpful, that you feel then you can't work with that person because they've been over rehearsed by the wrong coach. But you can't brush us all with the same thing. What you need to is find out what it is that a coach does, what it is that a singing teacher does, and then steer the conversation to what is helpful and what is unhelpful. So yeah,
Oh,
had
Amelia,
that question, but
that's
it didn't obviously go anywhere very far. But
no, but you know what though? We have to have these conversations, right? We have to. There's just so much divide in our industry between different disciplines, right? Why? I mean, we need to work together. We all want the same outcome. Like we all want our students to thrive and to be successful and to have voices for their entire lives. I mean, I love that you had the courage to do that, and I think more of us should be doing that. I know that a lot of teachers. I certainly struggled with teachers at the art school in Hamilton because they were assigning repertoire to my students going through voice change. And I was like, there is absolutely no way that this young man can handle, you know, waving through a window from Dear Evan Hansen. Like, there, you know, and but it's awkward, but you got to make those calls or talk to parents. Like, it's communication, right? Open the doors
yeah,
of communication.
that's the biggest problem, I think, is we call it high school, but that's, I think, your college equivalent. But the equivalent of your middle school, I think, is our high school. So that changing stages when they're at school doing productions, that I think is the biggest problem. It's the biggest challenge. You know, because you have teachers that they are teachers and then they're doing these productions on top usually of their regular hours. It's usually an extracurricular thing. They're trying their best, but you know, they're also maybe wrecking some voices along the way. I've definitely been able to say that about a couple of people recently. And then, of course, the students, they just want to keep the teachers happy. They don't want to look like a diva or drama queen in front of their peers. They don't want to highlight their voice development, which we all know can feel like a problem to some young individuals. They've got so much to deal with. They don't want to speak up, so they need us to advocate for them. And it needs to be done from a place that's really loving and kind because most of these teachers are burnt out themselves, right? They don't have the privileges that we have of slowing down or, you know, holding auditions to find the right person. They've got to fill the gaps. And if they need to change the key for this kid, then it's difficult with that kid. And no, 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 no.
I think just generally we have to find ways to support all, you know, everybody, and in that support we can honor everybody's teaching superpower and support our students. Now, I'm very excited to know more about your research project. You have just completed a massive research project about performance related anxiety. Could you please tell us about that?
Oh, yes. And I'll try and keep it brief. So I did a huge, oh my gosh, I think I just don't actually know how I did it. The data collection was insane. And my storage will tell you so. Oh, my data storage will tell you so. So I had a cohort of approximately 30 by the end, because obviously I started with more, but then they, some get contracts and go off and blah, blah, blah. So it's 30 young people aged between 8 and 18. Why 8? Because I felt that 8 is a good age that they can communicate, they understand their emotions, and they understand what's going on. They can speak for themselves independently. I would love to do this study with younger children, but ethically, I'm not sure that that would have passed through. So there was a huge cohort. I did loads of research before, literature review and such and such and such. And I then collated research from 3 areas: the medical field, the psychological field, and the singing practice field. I fused all of that together in another project to come out with outcomes of where I would start from, like with, all of those things that we hear about often, like, trauma informed. What can I do as a singing teacher? And again, I said I'll keep it brief. So with consideration of the medical implications, the psychological implications, but then what do we need in teaching practice? So I came up with 6 strategies, 5 of which I used in the case study. And then I had 8 sessions over a 12-week period that was recorded with all of the students. They had to do some paperwork at the beginning, they had to do a paperwork at the end of each session, and they had to do paperwork at the end. And basically that was just, it was insane. So we did 5 activities, and we used a song that they were working on, and we used all these strategies, and then I collated all the data. They all had to complete a journal. And yeah, the journals were excellent. And again, I'm going to say again, loads of data, which when I came to do data analysis and my colleagues doing their research projects were like, yeah, it took me about a week. I was like still there at 12 weeks analyzing data. It was crazy. But, I'm high functioning, so I got it done. And so, what the things that came up were things like, I called it a light bulb moment, students being empowered to notice their own triggers, their own issues. That was the most powerful thing that came out of the study. The fact that kind of tore me the most was that a lot of students had what they described as performance anxiety. And then in analysis stage, I realized that that was increasingly because they weren't prepared. That was really sad. I actually found that quite sad. It really impacted me in quite a big way, my practice in quite a big way, because there's a double edge to that. Resources. Does the student have the funds and the resources to have enough preparation? Does the student have a teacher that's resourced with the right information for, say, an audition? And how is the industry coping with that? Because usually they'll get like 2 days notice, maximum probably. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, well, if I know a young person that wants to audition for Matilda, I'm going to tell those parents that I need at least a year to prepare. And they're most likely going to look at me and go, are you joking? But actually, my favorite is when I get a young person in at 7 and I've got 2 years to prepare, because like you acknowledged, the score is insane. And along the way, I'll also prepare them for Cosette. I'll also prepare them for Eponine audition. I'll also prepare them for Sound of Music and all the other things, Annie's and Oliver's and all of those things. So, yeah, I found that one really, really challenging because it made me kind of go, okay, there's a big cohort of students who are having singing lessons regularly, but they are not ready for their audition.
Wow.
What is going on? What is going on here?
I want to just I just want to chime in there. This is so interesting. My brain is just on fire because one of the things so we do a play-based learning engagement and lesson pacing workshop. And one of the things that we talk about in that workshop is teacher guided review. So giving students more time in the lessons to go over and over and over the things that quite often we assign things to be done elsewhere and then we're disappointed in the results. But now you're saying this is adding to their performance anxiety because they're stressed out because they're not ready. They know, and kids know. I mean, people like children know when they're not ready. Like it's not just an adult thing. So this is fascinating.
Yeah, so I've got two quotes for you here that were taken directly from. I've got them on my screen, so I'm going to read them out to you. And I tried to shuffle through some of the journals and find some quotes because this isn't a time to criticize teachers.
No.
This is a time for us to go, okay, wow, I didn't think about that because yes, we think about that, but even somebody that engages in regular reflective practice, kind of went, oh my gosh, this is awful. So one student, age 13, said, I'm used to it, the song, and more okay doing it for a group of people. In an audition room, I fall apart and forget everything. So therefore, that made me think, okay, now that's obvious, now that they said it like that, because now I need to put together a pre-audition routine, a pre-performance practice. I need to work more on performance skills. I'm so focused on get this repertoire, get this, get that, blah, 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 blah. But actually, how many times does that child practice the audition? Performance. So then I put together after the study a whole bunch of pre-performance skills. So time to assess and address how can I make this person more comfortable in that audition room, on that stage, at that competition where they've never seen the environment before, where they don't know who's going to be sat in front of them. So in my studio, then I can put together little concerts, invite along other teachers, other professionals, or even other actors, other dancers, other performers, other anybody's to sit on a panel and practice that procedure of seeing strangers. And we can turn it into a little concert as well so that we've covered our costs and parents get to see them perform as well. Over here, we call them festivals often, the competition. So practicing that process of giving the music to the adjudicator, walking up some stairs to a platform, introducing. Yeah, I did some of that, but not all of it. With access to the internet nowadays, we can show them photos of the studio they're going to be auditioning in because we know that a few days before, at least, it's going to be at DanceWorks studios. Get on the internet, look up those studios, do a visualization exercise, have them visualize walking in the room. How might you feel? What taste might you have in your mouth? Alert their senses. And it's almost like you practice that process and they can visualize and put strategies in place in the practice. So then when they walk in that room, it's like, I've practiced this. Christina Schuell, I'm going to just name drop that in. She taught a wonderful exercise on a retreat kind of day that I went on with her, voice work day, where she would say, there, it's okay. Embrace yourself like your parents, grandparents, the fondest embrace you can remember. I'm paraphrasing her, I think, but it was that thing of telling yourself, I'm okay. And it has that effect on children if they know and they can think about, well, I sometimes feel butterflies in my tummy, or I feel my heartbeat raise, or I feel sweaty. And then you explain why that's happening in an age appropriate way. For example, Christina Schuel, I think, always used the lion coming in the room.
Oh, I like that.
And all of those. And that's scientifically what's going on. But when I do they're there, it's okay. They're there, it's okay. It's almost that, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
switching that button off. Anyway, without going too overboard, the other comment I had for you here was one of the case study students, age 11. My music didn't work. I'm worried I mess up and come in at the wrong point in the music. Is my music going to work? Did they get my music okay? And after they sang, so they had to do before, during, and after analysis in their journal. She, the accompanist, made me jump to the end of the song, presumably because they ran out of time and were asking them to do shorter sections of their song. So I forgot my words a bit, which in turn led to I felt sick and I felt worried during the song.
Oh, poor thing.
Absolutely. But this is an 11-year-old. And maybe an 11-year-old, another 11-year-old might never sing again.
That's exact. Yes. Yes.
Because that is a horrific experience. That's quite traumatic. And obviously, I've sort of cut out bits because that student had written a lot. But other things were things like, oh my gosh, I mean, no criticism on teachers, but yes, criticism maybe, but you're sending a student into an audition and they've never heard the piano part. Like, how do I make an excuse for that?
Yeah.
There's an excuse if that's a parent that's put a student in the audition room and they haven't had a teacher to guide them. I mean, but just even, I mean, I'm high empathy, but that just makes me feel like, oh my gosh, what? That's so scary.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I mean, one of the things that and I love this journaling idea. We would always have like after recital, kind of conversations, and
Debrief.
a debrief. Yes, I love that. And so I would have parents in the room as well. And the thing that blew my mind was how poorly they had thought they had done, even though I was like absolutely thrilled. But their perception of what a performance is or what they should feel like after a performance, or I think also, you hear them in practice and they sound so good. And like kids and well, even adults and families often don't understand that the performance is not practice. It's going to feel different. This is how you feel like, and little mistakes are a thing. And I make little mistakes. And it was really challenging to get that point through to a lot of families. And I've been teaching forever. I had families pull kids out after recitals, even though the performance was exceptional, because their perception of what it should have been or what I should have felt was not in line with what actually happened.
If I were to do the study again, I'm glad I didn't because I don't think I'd have survived the analysis, but I wanted to get parents to journal as well.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I'm going to leave that comment there because I think it's not a criticism of parents at all. But one of the questions that I had in the journals for the students was, let me find it. So, for example, in performance, because there were separate questions for daily thoughts and pre, during, and post performance thoughts. So, what performance did you do? How did it feel before? What thoughts did you have before? Did you notice any physical things before? What tools did you use before? How did it feel during? What thoughts did you have during? And then the same for after. What did you achieve in that performance? What are you proud of? What goals can you set for next time? You hear that? So it's not what went wrong, it's what goals can I set for next time? What do you need to let go of? And then what have you learnt and what have you achieved? What did your teacher say before, during, and after? And was it relevant and why? Was it useful here and why? Was there anything negative and how did you overcome that? Then, do you think you interpreted it how the teacher intended? Important
Wow.
question. Next, what did your parents say before, during, after? Is that relevant? Why? Was it useful? Why? Was there anything negative and how did you overcome that? What have you learned and achieved overall from this one performance? So you're absolutely trying to get that student not to diss what their teacher said, not to diss what their parents said, but to acknowledge if something wasn't helpful. Why? So that it's written down and the teacher can go, oh my gosh, I actually contributed to that. Now I know how to work for that student a bit better. And then the teacher can also approach the parent, not in a, oh my gosh, your parenting is failing, but actually, can we talk about something I've noticed in your child's journal? They wrote this down, and open a conversation or leave it with them to go and review. But I would love to do the parent one because as teachers, we can also have an influence in educating the parents that haven't had access to this developmental knowledge and stuff, right? Like, I mean, I'm recently a mum and I'm learning loads more about toddlers and babies and things that I never knew about. And I love to hear from other people's and professionals about what I can improve on. I love it when my son's preschool teachers write a note on things, suggestions for at home, because guess what? I don't know how to do that otherwise.
I just want to address that. We were talking a little bit about this prior to recording, and I want to bring it back up because it is a good point. I want to thank you for bringing that up. As a mom, when my son was young, I appreciated the feedback that I got from, the school teachers and the actually his daycare provider was so beautiful at helping us understand some of the places that he was struggling. And we wouldn't have known because, you don't see him in a group with other people. And I think as voice teachers, we were talking about this. We spend a lot of time complaining about parents, about how they don't support their kids, or this is my biggest pet peeve, we kick them out of the studio because they're a distraction. But we're not able to help them to understand what kind of support their kids actually need. And we can't throw shade on them because they don't know what they don't know. And as I think there's beautiful ways that you can communicate and talk about support. I love what you've done with asking the kids and helping them to be able to advocate for themselves.
Yeah. Because it is about helping that child, young person, become independent at their learning. But if you've got the parents sat in the room, I mean, even if the parent is on their phone working, even if the parent is on their phone on Facebook, on social media, then I can say, oh, mum, could you write that down? Can you record that? If mum or dad has got another child to ferry off to football, soccer, baseball, whatever, that's okay. But then I'm going to encourage that parent to bring a device to record the lesson. And then, yes, it's going to cost me time, but guess what? I charge for that.
Yes.
Guess
Yes.
what? My lesson fee incorporates that 5 minutes that I'm going to spend messaging that mum or dad to say, can you listen back to that recording? Because I really need Emily to grasp that exercise we did. Could you observe whether she's understood that? And just give me a little WhatsApp if you haven't got it, because I'll record something different if they haven't understood it. I'm not going to leave that another lesson. But actually, what I've done is I've budgeted, in my lesson charge, I budget for a bit of extra administration time outside of the lesson to answer WhatsApps, to answer questions, to watch a quick video, to do something
I
quickly.
love that. I love that. I hope my listeners, we've talked about that before on the podcast. Like Michelle's talked about that. You are not just running into a lesson and giving information you have outside of lesson time, and you need to be reimbursed for that. That needs to be part of your fee. And I mean, I remember putting that in my fees. Like your tuition fee pays for this, and to help parents understand that
Yeah.
my time isn't just the time I spend one-on-one or face-to-face with your child. I love that.
But also, I think it was Michelle. Yeah, I think it was Michelle who influenced me to add in a consultation, a 10-minute
Oh,
appointment that's paid for.
nice.
So I charge £15 for a 10-minute consultation. That might sound like a lot of money. It's more than £1 a minute. But if I get a message from a parent, they are so used to me saying, just book a 10-minute appointment and we can thrash that out. So it's that clear communication of, I can answer stuff in 2 minutes. In fact, you can send me 5 different things in the week and I'll answer that in little 2-minute bursts. But if you need me to sit down and concentrate on you for a solid 10 minutes, that's going to cost me time. So just book an appointment.
Oh, Amelia, you are a wealth of just great advice. We're gonna have you back because there's like just from this initial conversation, I have like 5 more topics that I would love to talk to you about. Now, I want to just wrap things up, but when you're working with singers, young singers, you know this, they're changing so much. They're growing so much. Their voice change, body change, their awareness. What's one of the key takeaways that you would give to teachers about understanding this is such a changing time for their singers in front of them? How would you inspire teachers through this time of great change?
Well, I have one very simple thing, and it's ask at the start of the lesson, what are your goals today?
I love that.
Sometimes we can be so, I was going to say obsessed, but I mean that in a positive way. We can be so driven by, I've got to do this. We've got this recital. We've got this competition. We've got this coming up. But actually, sometimes just listen at the beginning to what their goals are. And it doesn't matter what goals I have as a coach, it matters what goals they have. So there's 2 questions I ask. What are your goals today? And then if it's loads of things, sometimes I'll say, when you leave that door in 30 minutes time, in 60 minutes time, what do you want to walk out with? So then I know in the last 5 minutes, what have you achieved today? What are you taking away with you? Have I helped you meet your goals today? So they walk out that door going, I've done this, and I've done everything I wanted to do today. And sometimes we just have to put the brakes on for the student. So if they're coming in and they're overwhelmed with growing and changes and pressures at school, pressures at home, so many complex things, sometimes we have to just sing or
Oh, amen.
listen
Oh,
or just do
yes.
something that they need to do. And sometimes we have to go, do you know what? Should we just pull out of that recital because, I'm getting am I getting that? Ask the question. Take the brakes off for them. There's no recital that they can't miss. There's no competition that they can't do another time. Yes, sometimes we have to kind of say, right, I'm hearing you loud and clear. However, in 3 days' time, you're going to be auditioning in front of Cameron McIntosh. Do you want to sacrifice that goal right now? And if that child understands, or that young person understands, and they say, I need to put the brakes on, or they're giving you all those signals, we need to listen. Otherwise, they're just going to stop singing, or they're going to be overwhelmed. They're going to lock things away. And yeah. And I wish I had that wisdom,
Oh,
20s.
yeah. Yeah.
When I opened my studio, I felt so young, but I wanted to be so full of wisdom. And I think if only, if only I'd have had that when I started. But, we grow, we learn, we change, we evolve. I'm not being harsh on myself, but I do wish that as a young teacher, I would have had that skill.
Oh, me too. I thank you so much for that you just gave me goosebumps, because I felt the same way. As a young teacher, I thought I had to fix all the things and force all the things, and everybody had to be go 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 go. And I know that did not serve many of my students back then. And I always, even we were talking about neurodiversity and ADHD and autism. Like, I can think back to the students in my studio that I just didn't know. Right? When you know better, you do better. And I think of I call them my do-over students. And I wish I could go back and give them a space that was perfect for them, because the space that I was creating was for me.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for your work and your research so much. I am going to put links to all of Amelia's amazing information. And Amelia, are you going to be doing any of your teacher trainings coming up?
I am. I'm going to do some in the summer. So I'm going to do
Brilliant.
one on these strategies, and I'm going to do a general musical theatre for singing teachers,
Well,
in the summer.
friends, my podcast listener friends and colleagues, I'm going to put all of Amelia's information in the show notes. You must find and follow her. Amelia, my heart is full. This conversation is just a joy. And I want to let all our listeners know that Full Voice Music will be publishing Dr. Geneva Williams' new book, Teaching Young Voices. And Amelia has written a chapter on performance anxiety, which will be included in that work. So I cannot wait for your superpowers to reach more people.
Thank you. That's so kind of you.
A very special thank you to Amelia for sharing her expertise, her passion, and her research. Such a great conversation. My friends, be sure to check out the show notes to find and follow Amelia and to keep in touch with her. I also want to remind teachers, if you have not subscribed to the Full Voice Music newsletter, you are missing out. We offer lots of teacher trainings and our live office hours. If you got questions that you want us to answer, that's how you can have that happen. So visit our website, fullvoicemusic.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you can have access to all sorts of great opportunities for learning and for resources for your students. My friends, as always, I am sending you a big hug from Hempford Forest, Nova Scotia, and I am wishing you inspired teaching and happy singing.